Welcome to your 5-minute masterclass on the cloud. We're going to pull back the curtain on one of the biggest buzzwords in tech, and we're going to do it without all the confusing jargon. Just what you need to know.
You've probably heard it a million times, right? Oh, just save it to the cloud. But what does that really mean? Where is this cloud? That's exactly what we're going to figure out right now.
Okay, so here's our game plan. First, we'll tackle the big "what is it?" question. Then we'll get into what makes it so special, its superpowers. After that, we'll look at your options, see how it's all physically built, and then wrap up with something super important, your role in security.
All right, let's dive right in. At its heart, the cloud is really about a massive shift in thinking. It's about moving away from owning a ton of expensive equipment to simply using it on demand whenever you need it. So if you look up the official definition, this is what you'll find. But the key phrases you really need to remember are on demand and pay as you go. In plain English, it means you can get computing power, storage, whatever you need immediately, and you only get a bill for what you actually use. No more, no less.
You know, the best way to think about this is like the electricity in your house. You don't build a power plant in your backyard just to turn on a lamp, right? Of course not. You just plug into the wall, and the grid takes care of everything. The cloud is exactly like that, but for computing resources.
And this right here, this is a total game changer for businesses. In the old days, you had to spend a ton of money up front, that's capital expenditure, or CapEx, buying massive expensive servers that you thought you might need. The cloud flips that on its head. Now, it's an operational expenditure, or OpEx. It's just a variable cost, like a utility bill. You pay for what you use when you use it.
So, we know what it is, but why did it take over the world? What makes it so powerful? Well, it really boils down to 5 key characteristics. I like to call them the cloud's superpowers, because they really did change everything.
So let's run through them real quick. On-demand self-service means you can get resources yourself with a few clicks. Broad network access is simple. You can get to it from anywhere. Resource pooling is how providers efficiently serve lots of customers from the same hardware. Rapid elasticity lets you scale up or down instantly. And measured service means you only pay for what you use.
Let's just focus on that rapid elasticity for a second, because it is huge. Imagine your website suddenly goes viral. In the old world, it would just crash. Game over. In the cloud, it can automatically grow to handle millions of new users, and then, just as importantly, shrink back down when things quiet down. That kind of flexibility is just a revolution.
Okay, so the cloud isn't just one thing. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution. Think of it more like a menu, where you get to decide how much of the work you want to do yourself versus how much you want the provider to handle for you.
And honestly, the best way to understand the main options is with pizza. Seriously, first you have Infrastructure as a Service, or IaaS. This is like being given a kitchen and an oven. You get the raw infrastructure, but you bring your own ingredients. Next up, Platform as a Service, or PaaS. Here they give you the kitchen, the oven, and the pizza dough. You just focus on the fun part, the toppings. And finally, Software as a Service, or SaaS. This is the easiest. The pizza is delivered right to your door. You don't manage anything. Think about apps like Gmail or Netflix. That's SaaS.
You also get to choose where your cloud lives. A public cloud is what most of us think of, a shared environment from a provider like AWS. A private cloud is dedicated to just one company. Hybrid is, you guessed it, a mix of both. And multi-cloud just means you're using services from several different cloud providers at the same time.
So we keep talking about the cloud like it's some magical thing floating in the sky. It's not. It is very, very real. It's made of massive physical buildings all over the world. So let's take a quick peek at how a provider like AWS actually builds it.
It all starts with something called a region. And a region is just a specific place in the world, like Northern Virginia or maybe Ireland, where they've built a whole cluster of these data centers.
Now, inside each of those regions, things get broken down into multiple, isolated locations called availability zones, or AZs. An AZ is basically a data center, or a few of them, with its own power, cooling, and networking. They're separate from each other, and that separation is absolutely critical.
Which brings us to a really important question. Why would you bother doing this? Why go to all the trouble of putting your application in multiple data centers that are right next to each other?
The answer is 2 words: fault tolerance. It's all about building things that don't break. If you run your app across multiple AZs and something bad happens to one of them, a power outage, a flood, whatever, it doesn't matter. Your application just keeps on running from the other AZs, and your users never even notice.
All right, our final topic, and it might be the most important one, security. There's a common myth that when you move to the cloud, the provider handles everything. That is absolutely not true. It's a partnership.
This partnership is called the shared responsibility model. Here's how it breaks down. AWS is responsible for the security of the cloud. That means the physical data centers, the servers, the hardware. But, and this is key, you are always responsible for security in the cloud. That's your data, managing who gets access, patching your software. Everything you put on their infrastructure is your job to secure.
So what does that mean for you? Well, here are 4 things you absolutely must do on day 1. First, enable multi-factor authentication on your main account. Second, stop using that super powerful root account for daily work. Third, create a separate user for admin tasks. And fourth, always follow the principle of least privilege. Only give people the bare minimum permissions they need to do their job.
So as we wrap up, remember this, the cloud isn't just about renting someone else's computers. It's a fundamental shift that lets you move faster, scale globally in minutes, and try new things in a way that was once unimaginable. It's a brand new toolkit for innovation. So the only question left is, what will you build with it?